here at the headquarters for the ALS U.S. for Hope campaign in Waynesville, Ohio, I'd like to commemorate this message by dedicating it to a man who served his life in the civil rights movement in Hamilton County with Ken Blackwell and many, many more. To sit here on this day and let them know that there was a student listening through WLW, Stars and Stripes Radio, from my mama's house, from Morrow, and all the way up to Beaver Creek, Ohio, and even was blessed to work around great minds at the University of Dayton. I couldn't help but notice the strategy behind the marketing campaign of Donald J. Trump and his division, his sensationalism, and his way of working himself around the answer because he didn't have it. Well, I got an answer today. The wall should not be built by a Christian society. Jesus Christ would never tell you to impede a family starving to death from being able to be vaccinated from disease like COVID, or to turn a deaf ear to the crying mother seeking health care for her child who is yet but a leper. Jesus would say, as Ronald Reagan did, tear down that wall. There's a better solution, and it's called accountability. And it goes out to the churches, the government, and to your homes as parishioners of these fine institutions throughout the United States that have sat and read the Bible for thousands of years and yet won't apply the information attained from listening to this repetitive reading every single Sunday. I don't go to church. I consider myself a man of love, and I believe God is love, and I think that's enough to get us through. So to my Mexican people seeking asylum, I love you. And I hope that our Prime Minister, Giorgio Meloni, feels the same about the refugees coming in from Europe being pushed out by Putin and his agenda. These churches have an astronomical amount of money coming in, and they have very little overhead. Even the conglomerates that we see today, who have patterned themselves after the Burger Kings and McDonald's throughout America. The services provided from them and their monies, along with the Red Cross and FEMA from the United States government, should be able to afford this simple plan from a simple man who's a descendant of a disenfranchised nation. Back when we fought with the English for our independence and our liberty, our damn selves, and reached out with a helping hand, asking the Native Americans all the way from Belize to Boston to help us. And they did. It's our turn to fight the fears that I'm sure they had when they accompanied us, like Lewis and Clark with Sacagawea, to help, to assist, and to learn. A little over 1,000 miles separates the United States from Mexico, from the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico. In that 1,000 miles, if we built 100 churches 10 miles apart, Surely to God, the people inside could monitor the activities 5 miles each way. Lights on, running water, food that's donated at things like sporting events through the U.S. for Hope campaign, or acquired throughout our grocers in America through a bill that should be reaching Congress soon called the Mothers of Mercy 3.2 bill, where it explains how America wastes and how we can do things like create military meals where we condense it down to powder form, put water in it and eat it for the hungry. We can take all the throwaways from all the grocery stores and all the restaurants and simply save it by freezing it and having it converted into some powdered form food for nutrients for our starving children, our starving families across that border that we are going to tear that wall down for and feed. Our government pays farms and subsidy checks not to grow. There are things that don't make any sense, and that wall has to come down. If we took the money that's proposed to be out there in tithes for the Christian communities, to build 100 churches would be nothing compared to the amount of churches that have been built by places like Harvest and Crossroads across the United States of America, let alone the traveling circus that is Benny Hinn. If you look at the numbers that Benny Hinn's bringing in through credit, through cash, and through the entire world, it goes into the billions. So he should move his estate, which is the top of a mountain, probably, I would say, over 100 miles at least the estate is, and change it to the Mexican border where God wants him to be, not teaching, but applying the knowledge that's inside that Bible. We could take people who need to go on crusades. I know that a lot of time Mormons do missionaries. We could take homeless people who need a place to go and a role in our society. And it would be cheaper for us to buy them the tickets to give to the missions that sit on the border and help these Mexican families out than it would for us to process them through the penal systems and feed them up here in our jails and in our rehab centers. And it would give them what they desperately need, which is a role that they can become good at, find some dignity in, find some self-respect, and learn about the power of God by them giving that loving feeling, that heart that they have inside them to help another family and produce great ideas by doing so, and creating a new blueprint for the United States of America, for the poor, the lost, and the downtrodden in the north to get out of the winters and be down there in the Texas desert, and having a place like a mission where they can all get together and form a game plan to defeat hopelessness. We can spread propaganda like we do in the military by putting sheets out to tell them, this is how you become an American citizen. This is what you do to prevent birth of new babies into a situation like yours. These are how you get off drugs. These are how you escape cartels. These are the people that you can deal with that will lead you to your solution, because they were just as close to you as it could be before they found hope in this new place in America where we were honored once by being given the Statue of Liberty, which sits proudly in our arbors up there in New York City with a light that burns bright that says, troubled waters will rest here. as our government will assist you as we were taught by the great indigenous people of North America, helping us to reach across borders, reach across colors, reach across numbers, and become one gigantic race of people on a continent who love each other. There is no bigger Christian message than that. Love your neighbor. If you want a compass to get through your hard times, truth, faith, understanding, and forgiving yourself and asking others to do the same so that you can get up from being defeated. You can grab onto hope. You can wish for something, and you can try by being honest and loving what you're doing to spread that magic throughout the world. And that's what we need to do down there in Texas and California, instead of building walls and letting them suffer so that we can live the lifestyles that we live here. I don't have to tell you that we've took advantage of other economies in the world throughout the United States, diplomacy. And we have caused a lot of these problems overseas where we have tapped into their economies like we did the Russian economy and crumbled it. We have done things to take things away from the Latin American people. If they find something that's good, that has value, American business usually ends up in it. It's called a dependista theory, and we have to put an end to this at some point. I know Bill Clinton tried to do it with NAFTA, but he didn't add in the accountability factor of these businesses, these churches, and our government. We cannot allow businesses to go down there and take advantage by paying pennies on the dollar, not being checked by any kind of guidelines for the environment, and then turning around and keeping the cost of the car the same while they have dropped their expenditures to an absurd amount. That is called being reckless with your business and concerning yourself only with the profits. And I'm going to leave you with one. It's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth, but you got to understand this from the Latino side of the viewpoint. There's a company, and I think it was Bear, I'm not really sure. The article was in Newsweek magazine. It was way back. It might have been the same one with the Bill Gates article called The Red Scare versus Bill Gates. They had a medicine out that wouldn't pass through the FDA, but they had spent too much money to turn their back on it. So they took it to Mexico. They changed the name of it and sold it to the Mexican people. And for decades, they suffered from birth defects. So that company didn't have to eat the loss, our government said that they couldn't sell it here, and they dumped it on the poor indigenous people of Mexico in Mexico City so that they could make what little bit of money they could, and destroyed families. That's why we have regulation committees. I know you'll hear the Republicans and conservatives bitch about all the different committees that we have, and they're not all perfect. But to regulate things from a government with a collective amount of information is what the federal government is for. But it is not to come into our homes and towns and change the way that we're doing things unless we are committing an infraction. So we must do away with the Patriot Act, and we must tear down those walls.